Hi there, this is Dennis Velco with OutBüro. Thank you for tuning in to yet another episode of OutBüro Voices, where we have interesting and engaging conversations with LGBTQ professionals, entrepreneurs, and community leaders around the world. So today we are so pleased to be joined by Stan Kimmer. He actually fits all three of those categories: professional, entrepreneur, and community leader. I'm going to let him talk all about that, but just as briefly, Stan has a long career in corporate engagement strategies as a consultant, so make sure you check out his websites. That'll be in the links below if you're needing some engagement for your LGBTQ employees. And to further that along, he also sits on the board of the National Diversity Council in charge of their training. So he is exactly the right kind of person you need to help your organization make its transitions. Welcome so much to the show.
Thank you for that really robust, excellent introduction, Dennis. And I'm really glad and honored that you asked me to be part of this journey with you.
So could you take a little bit of time and give us kind of a brief overview of your background and how you got to be in the positions and situations you are now?
Yes, Dennis, it's actually a very interesting story. And part of it is almost like circumstances that just worked out great. I actually had spent 31 years at IBM, and I worked in almost every function: sales, marketing, product development, sales operations, marketing, brand management, finance, and accounting. And while working at IBM, I didn't come out until I was in my mid-30s. And I came out publicly when IBM announced domestic partner benefits. And then when I came out, the VP of diversity at IBM realized that I was the highest ranking out gay employee at IBM in Research Triangle Park. We have 10,000 employees there in North Carolina. And even though I was one step below executive, I was a senior staff person. I was the senior ranking out gay person. So every time they had diversity panels with executives, even though I wasn't an executive yet, I represented the LGBT community. And little did I know that Ted Childs, who was the vice president of diversity, was listening to me on these panels. And out of the blue, he calls me one day and he says, "I want you to be IBM's global LGBT diversity manager." Wow, we had the ideal job.
Exciting.
And so I took that role and I did that job for 4 years and really, really loved it, and did a lot of innovative things at IBM. Like I got transgender health benefits and transition benefits covered in our health insurance plans back in 2002,
Wow.
18 years ago. And then I decided that after 4 years of doing that job, I wanted to go back into line management because I wanted to try to get to executive level so I could be one of IBM's out LGBT executives. And I was able to get promoted to director of sales operations for our consulting practice. And then when I retired after 31 years at IBM, I said, I think I'll start my own business and build it around the job I liked the most at IBM. You know, what was I most passionate about? And I absolutely loved those 4 years I spent on IBM's diversity team. And so I decided that's what I'll start my business around, by being a diversity consultant and diversity trainer. And that was 10 years ago, and things are going great.
Well, awesome. And I imagine that that's what brought you as well to the National Diversity Council?
Yes, so after being in business for 7 years, the National Diversity Council started their branch in North Carolina, and I was one of the first people to reach out to them and saying, hey, I'm interested in, helping, start the work here. And that actually led me to connecting with people at the national level. And they were needing some people to help do some training sessions. So they tried me out in a 4-hour session that went really, really well. And then after that, they started using me in more and more trainings. And after doing that for about another year, they asked me to be their vice president of training. And so I started out by doing their workshops on best practices in diversity recruiting, best practices in employee resource groups, best practices in diversity councils and best practices in diversity training. And then they asked me to develop their one-day employee resource group workshop, and I teach that. And then they asked me to develop some workshops around unconscious bias. So I also teach on that subject. And then, of course, whenever they need somebody to do training on LGBTQ diversity for our clients, I'm always the one that does that.
Wow, that is quite a lot of areas and responsibilities and impact that you are having. Being
Yes,
at that.
and what's fun is that, learning new areas, not just being, of course I started, focusing on being an LGBTQ, diversity expert, and then I grew into these best practices areas and then into unconscious bias. And I think that's one important thing about being an entrepreneur and a professional is always learning and growing, learning new skills, learning new areas, and not just doing the same thing over and over again, expanding the repertoire of my expertise.
Oh, I could not agree with you more. I personally thrive on change and get very bored when things are stagnant. And so I'm the constant learner myself, which is really wonderful. Also, being an entrepreneur. I mean, you can do that in a large organization as well. But one of the both benefits and sometimes challenging pitfalls of being an entrepreneur is you do have to, especially if you're an entrepreneur of one or two or even three, you have to wear so many different hats at the same time. One of the examples, just to hit it home for people, one of the examples that I like to use kind of throughout my dialogues is I have this fictitious character named Susie. She's a specialist, plastic surgeon, cosmetic dentistry. But when she graduated from college, no one taught, there wasn't in dentistry school, there wasn't anything about business school, marketing school, especially, digital marketing. There was no finance education and so forth. And, but so often when people, no matter what type of business they're wanting to start, whether it's a local coffee shop, a dog walking business, or, a consulting practice, there's so many disciplines that you need to be open to learning. And or when you have the financial capital, grow it to the point where you can hire the specialists to do those fields. So it's so wonderful that you've been within organizations that gave you almost that entrepreneurialistic spirit, in the sense, even IBM, seeing your talents and seeing your energy and giving you that role to create and grow. I think that's amazing.
I also was very fortunate in my career. I was able to work in sales and marketing and finance and operations. And of course, the LGBT diversity work, giving me my skills in terms of diversity, that I gained all these different multidisciplinary skills so I could run my own business. And that's one thing I wanted to prove to myself. It's like, okay, I succeeded in a company of 300,000 people. That's one challenge. Now, and I succeed in running my own business totally on my own.
Wow, what an incredible opportunity. Now, if I may ask, those are very different fields. What was it about your background or you or the opportunities that, because going from sales to marketing to operations to finance, most people don't make those kind of departmental jumps. So what is it about you that kind of made that happen?
Well, it's funny because I don't tell many people this, but I have an MBA in finance and accounting, which is, here I am, a diversity consultant, an HR trainer. I think it's when I started my work at IBM, I was doing sales support for medium-sized businesses that were setting up their first computer systems. So I got to not only focus on the technical things, but kind of learning on all these different aspects of how companies did business and their processes. And I always enjoy just learning new things and exploring new things. So that was like an ideal job. And then also, even when you're working in a job, you're always working with other departments. So Like when I was in finance, I'd be working with the product developers in terms of how do you price these products so they'll sell in the marketplace. So, in doing that job, I learned about product development. So I could move from finance to product development. Then when I'm doing product development, I have to team and work with the marketing team that's going to market my product. So then, hey, I'll learn a little bit about marketing and then I can jump over there. So, no matter what job you're doing, you can always find a little something else that's involved with that job that you can maybe go to or bridge to next.
Whoa, very, very interesting, and a great lesson for those out there listening and are watching to take. And that is what I'm hearing you say is when you were in a role and you had cross-functional teams needs, you tried to get as much exposure into what that other team was doing and learning and truly partnering with them to the point where you gained enough skills to be able to be able to transition into a role in that other department. And I think, yeah, you know what? And it's so interesting too, because, in today's times, I think that's really great. If you have a job in a large company or even a good mid-sized company, let's say, over a couple of thousand people, and you do have very distinct different departments and a robust enough departments like that, I think that's a really great thing because, so many people are, you don't always have to look outside of your current employer to get a whole new career. And you're proof of that. And you could take a whole new career path by getting involved with projects that involve other departments and then setting those relationships up, right? That they're going to then take you on and mentor you and you can transition over. Very cool.
Absolutely. And also, when you do a really, really good job with what you're doing and you show you're a good team player and working with these other functions, oftentimes they'll seek you out. So that's always been, real fortunate that working with these different departments, I always get several offers like, hey, after a couple of years, why don't you come over and work in the marketing department?
Oh, very nice. Yes. So very cool. So, so you left IBM after I believe you said 31 years.
Right. Yeah, it was
Wow.
full. I took early retirement, so I had a a pension, and it was considered a full retirement at IBM. After 30 years, you can totally retire, and actually, when I retired, I didn't think I was going to go back to work immediately. And then one thing that I found out was that as a retiring executive of IBM, they provided me a year of transition career coaching. So IBM actually funded, my career coaching and helping me set up my business,
Wow.
that was really, really, an awesome benefit from IBM. And the coaching services I had was so helpful.
Oh, very nice. I've also, whenever I was employed with Mirage Resorts quite some time ago, they also had career coaches and for the entire IT department. And that was a really great experience. I think folks out there, it's very beneficial to have that third party objective person to help ask you questions. They don't always give you all the answers. It's your answers, but they help you think about things in a different way and see connections that maybe you haven't seen. So I very much value life coaches, business coaches, career coaches, and so forth. So that's awesome.
And one of the things that this career coach did with me, and now I do it when I assist others with their career development. And this is like a really good exercise for anybody listening to this to do, is it's called CARS, C-A-R. And what she said is think about, during my career and try to think of doing this 10 times. Think of a one sentence challenge that you can write, that you were faced with this business challenge. It has to be one sentence, that's it. Then one sentence of what action did you take? So what did you do? And then one sentence on the results. So it's C for challenge, A for action, R for results. And that one sentence, it can actually be something that's quantifiable, so much the better. So she had me think through, my cars, my challenges, my actions, and the results. And then we studied those, and it kind of led to, this is what you're really good at. This is how you can build your brand in terms of leveraging your strengths.
Well, wonderful. I say something very similar in a couple of articles about writing a good resume. No one wants to see on your resume your duties. They want
Yeah,
to see challenges, actions, and quantifiable results. So spot on. Very
yeah.
great there.
Yeah, certainly, I love all these resumes, good team player, everybody has that, think of something unique and special, but also focusing on those results and what you achieve is so important on resumes.
Absolutely. Because you can get to all those fuzzy words that seem to in really, as you didn't say it, but they're pretty meaningless because they're not backed up by anything, right? So if you can talk about a challenge and the actions you took and the results, and through that, it illustrates very clearly that you're a good team player, right? That's what makes an impact.
Because you need to be good at doing something and have skills, but also have the real passion that you really enjoy doing what you're doing. And if you enjoy doing something and you're good at it, then you're really going to succeed.
And that is in your career, whether you're working for someone or as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, because I love this diversity work. It's like it's making so much of an impact, and I love doing it so much that I do it well because I enjoy it.
Awesome. And and that always shines through. And you're saying very similarly, one of the three most influential persons in my life back when I was in my early 20s, he very well-renowned person, and we were sitting down having lunch one day, and I looked up to this gentleman. I mean, I just respected him. I admired what he had accomplished in his life, and we're still close to this day, 30 years later. And but he said, as one day I was, again, I was like 22, 23 years old. I was having a hamburger at this restaurant, and I asked him, because I'm like, how did you do all of this? And he just nonchalantly looked at me. He goes, well, it's pretty simple, Dennis. If you do what you're passionate about, you don't mind working your butt off, because you don't mind putting in the hours like I do now. I work 10 to 16 hours a day, but it's because I'm working on something that I'm passionate about. And so I can totally understand and validate, what you're saying there. And, there's so many people out there say, oh, I hate my, every single day. I'm quickest way, if I'm dating someone or getting to know someone, even on a friend level, even a friend, if every single day or every time we get together having coffee or going out for drinks and all they do is complain about their job, I'm probably not going to be calling them up to do anything much, because number one, I will tell them quickly, if you don't like your job, get a new job, right? Because why are you doing the same thing and constantly complaining about it?
So I came up with one that looks at career and work, and the vertical axis is you're either good at something or you're not good at it. You're not good at something and you're good at it. And then the horizontal axis is you hate doing it or you like doing it, or you have a passion for it. And of course, if you're bad at doing something and you hate doing it, I mean, that's like the definition of hell. For me, it's like doing dishes. I hate doing dishes and I do them poorly and I leave all kinds of stuff on the dishes and my partner gets mad and says, like, is this clean? Now, if you're good at doing something, but you don't like it, that's drudgery. These are the people who, hey, they're doing their job, they know what they're doing it well, but they just don't enjoy it. That's drudgery. And who wants to live in drudgery? Then on the other scale, you have something that you're really passionate about, but you don't do it very well. And I call that a hobby. Something you just want to do for fun. You enjoy doing it, but hey, you're never going to make a living at it. But then that sweet spot is when you're passionate about something and you love doing it and you love doing it well. that's where your vocation should be, where those two match.
That is a great, easy visualization. And I really like that you said that and illustrated that for us. So, so I guess, you kind of have your fronts on your consulting business, and you have your, I'm sure, loads amount of work on your diversity, the National Diversity Council. That seems like quite a workload.
I'm really efficient and very fast. And frankly, with all this, with COVID now, it's like, I don't go out very much. So it gives me, more time, to do these things. But, I try to be very, very efficient and really prioritize what I'm doing. So I can get a lot done in a short amount of time.
Okay. Well, we briefly talked earlier about, some of your hobbies and, having so much, focus on work. I really, strive for balance. Like I had a Zoom call earlier, a business call with a potential collaboration earlier today. And I have back to you, then I have a couple more back-to-back meetings. And I was looking at my calendar like, I have about an hour and a half between my meetings, and I love to hike, but can't do a whole lot right now, but walk. So I went for an hour and a half. I put in 4 miles just before jumping on this call. So that's something I like to do. And I enjoy bike riding and kayaking as well. What are some of the maybe hobbies or things that you do to kind of balance out your busy life? And it's because it sounds like you kind of should be retired, but you've created such an incredible, vast amount of work and responsibilities for yourself too.
So, of course, a long time ago, I always loved international travel. I've been to like 65 different countries and love photography and hiking. But then, when I did retire, I've always enjoyed watching figure skating on TV. And when I retired, I started going to the major figure skating competitions as a fan. And then I got to meet some of the skaters and build personal relationships with them. I know a lot of the Olympian figure skaters, personally.
Oh my gosh, too cool.
And then I said, we're having so much fun. I think I want to do this. So at 59 years old, with no experience, I decided I wanted to train and become a competitive adult figure skater. So I got a coach and I started from scratch with those baby steps on the ice. And now I'm competing on the adult circuit and doing really, really well. And what's cool about this is it's the complete opposite of, sitting here doing trainings on Zoom all day long with clients. Sometimes like a few days, I don't even leave the house. I just sit in front of my computer all day. But my 4 or 5 days a week when I'm figure skating, that's great physical exercise, and it's really good for getting my body to be really flexible and making my whole body strong. Great posture, and also it's fun in terms of the acting part of figure skating, putting together a program and going out on the ice and delivering like a fun program that people really like. So, one of my more popular programs is I actually do a number from Book of Mormon, the Broadway play, and I skate with a life-size puppet.
Really?
Yep.
Oh my gosh, dude.
So you have to Google, just Google, Stan Kimmer, Kimer, Book of Mormon on YouTube. It'll come up. You can see my program of, I do that song, You and Me, but mostly me. And so we're both dressed in the Mormon outfits that they have in Book of Mormon.
Oh my gosh, too funny. I will have to put a link to that in the show notes down below.
Okay. And now I'm going to be developing a new program. I want to do one, Corny Collins from Hairspray.
Okay.
So, it's a lot of fun. And I'm really doing well, which is exciting, winning gold medals and becoming popular in the adult figure skating community.
Wow.
And it also shows that no matter how old you are, if there's something you've always wanted to try, go out and do it.
Absolutely. I could not agree with you more. How neat. So after a 31 year career at IBM, you've started a business, you've worked your way into becoming a vice president for a national organization, and you have started figure skating on a national competitive level. Oh
Yep.
my, you're a freaking rock star. Oh my
I
God.
mean, life just keeps getting better. In fact, one person on Facebook put, uh, look, basically said he wrote, looking back, what was the best year of your life? And people were saying, when I was 28, when I was 33, 2016. And I put, every year keeps getting better, so I don't think I reached it yet.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. Well, cool. Well, is there anything else that you would like to share with us, Stan?
Uh, One thing I would like to also talk about, in terms of, I am an LGBTQ activist
Mm.
and do a lot of training in that area. And one thing that I've learned, through my journey is the importance of not being a single issue person. And I've actually done a workshop called Your Issues Are My Issues. That, if the
Mm.
LGBT community is going to build allies, across everybody, then we also have to care about issues like addressing the systemic racism in our country and dealing with economic disparity and dealing with the environment
Mm.
and dealing with rural life and and issues there. So we really need to think about as a community, how can we support other communities in their struggles, and a lot of these issues also overlap with us. So I think it's another very important thing that needs to be shared in the broader community.
Well, you are absolutely right, and even with one of the calls I was on earlier today is, like as I like to share with employers who I have the opportunity to chat with is, as an example is when you focus on diversity and inclusion, and specifically on the LGBT community, what is so great there is it's you're not being um, uh, overly focused. You're actually broadening, or because we are everything. We are all races, we are all religions, we don't all live in the city, we live in rural areas where we have all different levels of economic scale. And so you're right, the LGBT community is also one that's very prime focus as a community of itself, because we are part of everything else in a very broad manner, that we have a really neat position. And so on that, would love for folks to check out back episodes as well. I'll put some links down below, but if you just scroll through, one of the previous people on the show, he focuses on marketing communications with an emphasis on the environment and renewable energies. And one of the first show actually was Celia Daniels. She's amazing transgendered person living in LA, and in her story she talks exactly as you just did, where she purposely sought to go out and volunteer for lots of different types of community organizations of homeless, not just LGBT homeless, but homeless in general, elderly issues, environmental issues. I mean, I don't know how she has time to sleep. She does so much. So she's a great example of someone who is doing exactly what you're talking about. So just wanted to call attention to her, and could not agree with you more, but also just to be clear too, that folks is, the nonprofits in the LGBT community, most of them, outside of the few golden column top 10
Yeah.
organizations that you could name off, the vast majority of LGBT nonprofits operate on an absolute shoestring budget. So yes, I agree with you absolutely that we need to be multi-approach in all of our, outreach and giving and activism, but make sure that in doing so you don't ignore all of the wonderful nonprofits who need your funds, need your volunteering and services and expertise, because so many struggle, and especially now in COVID, the donations have just dropped off incredibly.
Talking about COVID, that's been a real interesting aspect of my business because things were going along pretty well, and then COVID hit, and my business completely dried up. And I even had some web-based sessions already scheduled, and those people even canceled, saying that people are going to be so focused on COVID. So I just kind of said, hey, I'm doing fine. I'll just skate more and read books and things. And so I had a few months where I had very little work. And then when the George Floyd thing happened, and then the other murders of Black and brown people, it's like everyone is now focused on diversity, and it kind of and then ever since that time, my phone's been ringing off the hook. And even though I had 3 months where I basically had no business, I'm going to end this is going to be my best year ever business-wise. And
Awesome.
I know, and I really hope that this is not just like the issue du jour, but that this is really going to drive systemic change around diversity, and that, organizations are going to really be serious about this and make a long-term commitment, and not this is the hot thing for the next 6 months.
Yes. I've also have seen reports and articles on where COVID, because of laying off people, that diversity has kind of taken a bit of a background. And yeah, so hopefully as folks are looking at that rehiring and so forth, that they'll take a strong focus on that. And of course, as a reminder for everyone out there, when you do focus on LGBT, you are not excluding, you are actually very inclusive. So there are the different races, there are the different religious representation, and of course, gender. Oh, and not just the two binary. Wow.
Right. That's another area that I've been spending a lot of time on this year. That I call it the hot new area, is dealing with gender non-binary people, and people have been requesting more workshops on how to respectfully treat gender non-binary people, or gender expansive people, or gender fluid, whatever term you want to use, in the workplace. And that among the younger generation, they're not stuck in these typical male and female roles, and that there are more people now coming out as non-binary. And so that is going to be a real hot area, going into the future. The use of pronouns, and, how do you word things so that you're not assuming that everybody is either male or female. Like, starting a speech and saying ladies and gentlemen, that excludes people who are gender non-binary.
Yes. And do you know what? I would just like to take just a quick moment of pause and appreciation, because I appreciate that you being in your long career in focusing on diversity inclusion, your business focusing on it, you being at your position in the National Diversity Council. And here you are openly acknowledging, which I do myself and appreciate you doing, saying that you learning too. You're learning, you're constantly learning. And, sometimes it is a learning process, because it's dealing with people whom you don't have the exact same personal experience to immediately identify with. And, for an example, having casual conversations and using the they, thee, them pronouns. It's not, I've not had those yet to how does that naturally feel? The more you do something, the more natural it becomes. And that's learning and training. And, so it's also, so companies, when taking these on, obviously, what a huge challenge, because you're not only having to get over all of the subconscious and consciously learned things, and which is termed unconscious bias, and all of those childhood learned ingrained things, but you're also now having to learn, which was like, oh, they're having to learn to be okay with two gay guys. Now they're also having to learn how to do, so many other things, or the experiences. So you have a challenging role, and I just appreciate how you're stating, how you're learning too. And I think everyone is on a learning journey, as you stated earlier. If we're not, and like me, if you're not constantly learning, you might as well crawl under a rock, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anywho.
This is something neat about figure skating too. It's not a sport you can learn it in 1 or 2 years. I'm going to be learning something new for the next 15 years, figure skating, because there's so many moves and so many things to do and so many levels of skating that I'm never going to run out of new things to learn. And I think it's going to be that way also in the diversity area, that things are always going to continue to evolve and grow. And that's what makes this work exciting.
Yeah. And it's also, I think, especially my past work in the past was in corporate business process, technology, and change. So I typically reported directly to the CFOs, but I dealt with every major department in an organization. And what I would have to do is basically ensure that the employer offered amnesty to the employees during the transition period of learning the new processes. And because some people would be afraid, oh, I might lose my job if my boss finds out that I've been doing it this way, because it was totally wrong and costing them money, right? And I think it's very important that employers know, and which I tout is, well, look, I don't expect any corporation to be perfect, because you're not perfect. And your employees aren't perfect, but it's a matter of coming from the openness of learning and the openness of growing and striving to become better. So cool. Well, I know you have another meeting here coming up, and I so much appreciate you taking time out of your day today to chat with us.
I am actually honored that you asked me, because I appreciate the work that you're doing, and there's hundreds of people that you could choose to talk to. So I do feel honored that you reached out to me and asked me to do this. And I hope that some of your listeners and readers, they'll get in touch with me if they need, diversity training or consulting. And maybe they can look up my skating videos too.
Well, I will make sure to have a link to that down below in the show notes. So thank you again so much, Stan. It was such a great time chatting with you. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in to watch and or listen. Yes, make sure you do head on over to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Spotify, and about 10 others, so that you can listen to these episodes while you're mowing your lawn or doing your cardio. Thank you so much for listening today. Make sure while you're here as well, be sure to hit that subscribe button and notify, and on those audio apps, hit the follow button to make sure that you're informed of all new episodes as they come out. This is Dennis Velco with OutBüro. Join us on outburo.com, OutBuro.com. Bye-bye.
Bye.